Good afternoon, this is Eric McKenna with Eric McKenna Designs. In this video I'll try to be brief, but it's part of the series of blog posts that I'm doing on kind of a modern Windsor style stool. Most of this I was inspired by Peter Galbert, and you can check out his work at chairnotes.blogspot.com. He's a fantastic chair builder. Very inspirational. But what I want to do in this video is kind of show everybody how I orient the legs, how I do the layout to determine the center line of the mortises and the angles of the mortises. So I start by first, it's going to be hard to see in this, but the orientation of the round tenons in the legs. I've got the ray plane, which is perpendicular to the growth rings of the leg, perpendicular to the grain of the seat. And you'll see that on these legs, I've got them shimmed appropriately so that the bead detail, which is kind of hard to pick up, but it's right there in the center of the screen, and right there, and right there. If you can see on my pattern, 8.5 inches is where I turn that bead detail. So what I do first is I level it up so that that bead is the same distance from the tabletop on all three legs. So that's been done. After I do that, I determine the angle from the tabletop for each leg. And the way I do that is I use this stick. You can kind of see I've got graphite there and graphite there, and with the legs sitting in that orientation, when I put this up against the legs and slide it up and down, I basically am just touching the apex of those legs along that plane. And again, don't know if you can pick it up, but there's a very light pencil line that is in the dead center of each leg. Once I have that established on the outside faces of each leg, including the back, I take my bevel gauge, simply set it up onto the bench top, and I visually look for parallel, and I'll take a reading from each one of those 6 marks, and I'll mark it out on just any random board. So once I have those 6 lines drawn, I basically am looking for an average of those 6 angles, which in this case ends up being about 11.5 degrees. And I'll show you how I drill those and the jig I use later. So once I've got that information noted, to get the center line and the location for each mortise, again, I refer to my pattern. So from that 8.5 inch center line, which is where the bead detail was turned, I go 7/8 up and 7/8 down, and those will be the locations for the 3 mortises. So if I can show you, what I do is once I have those lines established, I use a simple compass, like you can see here. I set it flat on the bench top, and once I got that set to, like in this case, 7/8 below the number 2 rung, or the rung that's centered on the bead, I go ahead and I mark a pencil line across, which will be perfectly parallel to the bench top. Once I have those lines drawn, you can see I'll stretch rubber bands across those markings. So if I can catch it here, you can see that the rubber bands are perfectly parallel on each side. And so there's number 1, number 2, and number 3. And once I have those rubber bands set, I essentially have determined the outside edges of the plane between the legs. And the way I find the center line is simply to take a ruler, and I'll hold it up underneath the rubber bands, marking the center on the line that I scribed parallel to the bench top. Once I have that line, I've got the center line location of the mortise, as well as the height of the mortise above the tabletop. And after that, I simply take the legs out, and in a future quick video, I'll show you how I drill that average angle in each leg accurately on the drill press. If you watch Pete Galbert, Mr. Buchanan, you'll see that they use hand methods of drilling, but I've had some poor luck, and maybe it's my drill bits, maybe it's my technique, but I prefer to use the drill press just simply because of the accuracy of the hole, and it leaves a really nice clean entry hole in my legs. So that's the method I prefer. So thanks for watching, and we'll check you later.